So what I've done between the last lecture and this lecture is I've actually converted the .mov file into a series of TIFFs, one TIFF representing every single frame. Now the reason I've done this is for ease of access and simply to make it work a little bit easier and make it much more easy to access every single frame. That's going to come up that's going to be a very, very important point a little bit later on. Now the thing I forgot to talk about last time was the actual process we're going to take through with this project. Now, as the first time you're watching this will be the first time I've actually done it, as you do with many visual effects shots, it's going to be something of an interesting process, and it may have to change as we run into problems. So, the first thing I plan to do is use BouJou Studio, which will allow us to motion track the sequence. Then I'm going to bring that into Maya with a BouJou file, which will allow me to follow that camera move and put 3D geometry into the sequence. Then I'm going to render that 3D geometry in Maya out, and then composite that 3D geometry into the original shot in Fusion, and then deliver it to the clients, which is due in about 4 or 5 hours from now. So, right, so let's get cracking. This is a wonderful piece of software called BouJou, which is used for motion tracking sequences and making 3D cameras of 2D geometry and 2D sequences. So I'm going to click Import Sequence. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask me to point it towards the shot. So this is the first example of where my TIFF sequence is going to come in. Now, the fantastic thing about my TIFF sequence is I know that the first frame I've selected here, exported, will be the very, very first frame in that sequence, rather than just whatever was shot in the .mov file and camera. So I'm going to open it up, and BouJou, being the masterful thing, is going to ask me all kinds of things. It's going to ask me whether it's interlaced. It's not. It's going to ask me whether it's a free move or a nodal pan. Now, a free move is when the camera is physically being held. It can walk around or look up or down or zoom in or zoom out. Or a nodal pan. Now, a nodal pan is basically the camera will only rotate from a single point as if it's on a tripod, and it's the gimbal is loose and it can look up or down or right or left, but it doesn't actually zoom in or out. Now, I know that this is true, so I'm going to select nodal pan. If you're not sure, go with free move. It's not necessarily as accurate, but it will always get it done. So I'm going to click OK, and it's automatically selected my frame range for me, which is fantastic. So from there, after we've imported the footage, what we're going to do is use a wizard tool. I don't necessarily always recommend using one of these, however, they are absolutely fantastic in the case of this particular piece of software. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to work its way from the beginning of the sequence all the way through to the end. And what it does is it's looked, as you can see from these little areas, these little points, it's looked for areas of interest where there's high level of detail. And then it's analysing, as you can see, frame by frame, going through and watching these areas of detail and seeing how they move or react over time. So, for example, it's picked the corners of just about everything, edges, hard lines, soft lines, every piece of detail it thinks could be potentially interesting. And then it analyses every single frame and follows them through. Now, ideally, in order to save time, what I should have done is mask this off and not have it track this man here, and then that would just allow the computer in order to just to track this background here, which will allow it to generate a camera move based on that angle. Now, I'm going to stop recording now because this is going to take a couple of minutes. We're about 10 minutes later now, and what we've got is a track of the entire sequence where all these little tiny squares, these little markers across the entire sequence, have tracked as many points as they can possibly get on. Now, this isn't actually a track itself, this is just tracking details. Now, what BouJou then attempts to do, and it's just doing right now, is it's going to analyze every single one of these squares and look for common movements and common positions, and create what's called a camera solve, where elements which disappear after a few frames or can't be tracked or move too fast are removed, and basically what you're left with are any consistent position. So as you notice, from here to there, all these points here stay in exactly the same position, whereas all the points that were on him are now gone, because they're considered to be unsuccessful tracks. And you'll notice as he puts his arm there across the points, perhaps earlier, they'll go blue, and the computer then suggests that because these tracking points were here before his arm and after his arm, they must be a piece of solid geometry. So this looks good. I'm going to carry on. I would not like to exceed geometry, and this is where I export a camera from Maya, which is enormously simple. It's such a simple, easy process. I recommend, if you get the chance, use this software. Shot 01. Because it also managed to export in just about every format you can imagine: 3D Studio Max, After Effects, Cinema 4D, Flame, Houdini, Lightwave, Maya, Smoke, Softimage. You know, anything you can possibly imagine is here, or near enough. So, done and done. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and work my way through all the other shots I've got to do, and then I shall meet you in Maya. Thank you very much.